Okay, it's about 4 minutes early, but I'm going to go ahead and get started. We may have some people join me. Let me go put the door to the lab a little bit closed. And what I would need you to do, if you would, is mute. I'll go through here and let's see here. I'll mute all. So and glad to see Brian here, Brandon, and Christian. And we're going to look at Chapter 8 today, which I have to confess to you is kind of, well, you know, information security is not my field. And so this course, which is indeed a kind of an overview, is there's a lot here in Chapter 8 that I understand, but I would not stand here and tell you, that I participated in those kinds of activities, or I don't even consider myself an expert on these. And really, this course, because it's just so broad-based, there really isn't anybody we could get to who could teach it, except maybe a few people. Ms. Turn, she was here last year, could probably do about everything here. She's worked with that. But anyway, Chapter 8 it deals with securing information systems. Now, let's see who all is. We've got Brian, Libby's, Brandon, and Christian. Good. I'm going to do something here for just a moment. I want to take us over to the New York Times. Okay, and then today will be a little more didactic than usual. That is, I'm going to try to go through the text and talk about some of these issues. We all live with them, but frankly, I could say this. Those of you who have any interest, there are all kinds of programs out there on cybersecurity, information assurance, information security. That is a hot field, and people, even entry-level people, are desperately needed because the security issues have far outrun our capacity to deal with them. Now, I'm going to go over to the New York Times because I wanted to show you just a real interesting article. So let me pop in over there for just a sec. Okay. And there we go. And this is an article that deals with, this is very interesting. This is the growth of nation states using cyber power. Now, let me say this. At one point in time, hackers, people who, I'm going to use the term hackers. There were supposedly two kinds of hackers. One were called white hat hackers. These are people who would expose problems with systems or problems with software so that people would fix them. Then there are the black hat folks who are not intent on treating you well. When the first viruses in the textbook talks about this came out, computer viruses, these were malicious things released by individuals. But what we're seeing now, for example, like ransomware, okay, or this article talks about North Korea and its rise, okay, as using cyber power. This is the first time since we've seen the internet, since we saw the rise of the internet, which is now close to about 25 years. Nation states or actors on part of nation states use it as a weapon. Although there are some examples of the United States and Israel supposedly used the Stuxnet to vandalize the centrifuges in Iran. There's a reporting out there that during the Obama administration that they used hacks and viruses to disrupt the North Korean missile program. And so this is an interesting article because it shows that there are entire nation states are now getting involved in this kind of thing. And the issue, things like ransomware, those kinds of hacking attacks, data leaks, all this stuff. these are things that are just really problematic for business people and trying to deal with them. So I wanted to see this. You could see even back to 2014 when Sony got attacked by the North Koreans. And again, then here's a data breach for the National Security Administration, a reported one. This is serious business, and it's so costly, and it creates a lot of problems. So I wanted to let you know that article's out there to read. It's very interesting. It talks about how they are developing a cadre of people who do nothing but cyber warfare. Now, I can assure you that the Russians are not too far behind. They probably are the very best in the world and the most practiced. And I think I had mentioned before that when the Republic of Georgia, which is one of those little countries that declared its independence at the end of the Soviet Empire, when the Soviet Union went down, there are several of them, like the Ukraine, Belarus, etc., who claimed independence, and Georgia was one that the Russian Federation went after when Putin came into power. And one of the things they did was disable the communication system in Georgia. They defaced government websites. They did denial of service attacks, a whole series of things. And the world really wasn't watching closely enough to see what was going on. But now I think with the United States election, with all these gigantic data leaks and ransomware, all this stuff, I have a little lady in my class who was a victim of ransomware. And, you just have to be careful and you hope for the best. But there are some things that businesses can do. But this chapter 8 really talks about that. Now, in addition, I'm going to pop down here. You have a couple of things to do. One is the interactive session. That's session number 4 on pages 142 to 141 to 142. And that one, if I'm not mistaken, deals with the issue of cyber warfare. In fact, I'm turning over here to it right now, and indeed it talks about, behavioral targeting. My apologies. And so I'll be interested to see hear what you have to say about that. It's interesting. This weekend I can't remember where it was. I was over, maybe it was at ESPN. It might have been at News OK, but a banner ad for one of our programs here at the university popped up. Now I clicked on the link and it did nothing. So the banner ad didn't take me. The link in the banner ad took me nowhere. So they have a hair of a problem there, as one would say. Now, also we have a hands-on MIS project number 7. Okay, and I want to talk about that for just a minute. Here are the directions. Okay, and I'm going to ask you to use and you can read these faster than I can talk, but I want you to take that risk assessment, that Microsoft Excel file, and do the following things with it in terms of working up a risk assessment. And I'll scroll over. You say, where's it at? Well, I'll show you. It's right here. There's the risk assessment file. And the hands-on project is due the 18th, as is the intersective session. That assignment was due today. And then the hands-on project and the chapter quiz are due on the 18th. Okay? So now let me talk about the 18th for just a moment. I will be doing a screencast. Okay? And I know with fall free days, I've been here long enough to know that with fall free days, Wednesdays are pretty much, this place becomes like a ghost town. So, I have a class at 11, then this class, and, do I expect a whole bunch of people to show up? Probably. I'm not holding my breath. I may do a pre-recording of the Wednesday. If I do, I'll let you know, but it just depends on what I'm feeling like that I want to do. But I just wanted to show you this resource over here, this article about what's going on. And again, I've taken it to several places that track cyber threats, the kinds of things that are going on. Now, as I've mentioned before, I'm going to be a little bit didactic about this. So I'm going to diminish my screen for a second. There he is, Cardinal Buddy. Although he's not in the playoffs, he's not smiling today. But I want to walk you through some of the figures in the text, okay? And I'm just going to render these up here so you can see them. And I'm just going to go through what I think are some key points. And the book does a great job of starting out with talking about the big bank heist that occurred, and they talk about the humongous amount of money, and then showing us this business of where things can go wrong. And this is figure 6, pardon me, yeah, this is figure 8.1, okay? And so what you have laid out there for you are all of the potential issues that can occur in a management information system. And you can see each of these. There are any one of a number of things that can go wrong. And so, and the reason is that systems are vulnerable is simple. Systems are things that are strung together. They're meant to interact and to work together. So when one thing gets compromised, everything can get compromised. And so that figure there really does show you, okay, the different entry points or the types of things that can be used or things that can go wrong. Now, I'm going to pop over here and we'll take a look at figure 8.2. This walks you through just a simple kind of situation. And they talk, this is over on, this is figure 8, it's over on page 308, where they talk about Wi-Fi, and they talk about security challenges that are involved with that. And basically, what you see is an authentication request, a challenge. The challenge part is when you and I, for example, when you come to OBU and you come to log into Canvas, okay, you do an authentication request, excuse me. And then the challenge is it will ask you for a password and a username and password. And if you put those in, you know, you're good to go. The problem is this: you could be an intruder. You could be someone who has gotten a password and a username, or you could be someone who, by whatever means, hook or crook, and now you're in the system, okay? And so I know that when you guys are out there, there is the temptation to swap your information so you can log in or something. I've had this happen before, and I've had students come to me that later on that told me I gave so-and-so my password and my email, and now I've got a problem. And so you never want to compromise yourself in that way, but it's easy to do. Again, this is the whole, all of these processes, security processes, are based on this type of interaction. A request for authentication request, a challenge, a response, it's either successful or it's not. And an intruder will try to get themselves inside that process. If you have Wi-Fi at home, for example, you log into it, always make sure that your login is hidden, because you do have the option. These folks that make these router systems for home will give you an option, or cable providers will give you an option if you want to show, for the password to show, so you can know what it is. Well, here's the problem. If you are out there and you have a war driver going around and you may get your information compromised. Now, it hasn't happened where we live right now, but it's been about 3 or 4 years ago. My wife and I was working or something, but I was working at home, and I looked up, and from my office window, I had a home office like I always do, and I looked up, and I saw a vehicle sitting about, I don't know, maybe about a third or a quarter of a block away from me. Okay, and I thought it was really odd because he had this. It looked like he had all this kind of equipment in his car. And guy sitting in there. Okay, and then I looked and I saw a laptop, and I thought, uh-oh, this is a problem. So I shut myself off immediately. I closed everything down. Okay, and then I went outside to find out who this person was, to get a license and all that, and he took off. So I had a war driver. So I went back and opened up, and I changed all my passwords on my Wi-Fi so he couldn't get into my system. And then just for good measure, I still felt nervous. I took that router off. I went and bought another router, and then I just took the other router and I gave it to somebody. But I thought this has been compromised. So the textbook mentions war drivers, and they're out there a lot, and they'll drive up and down streets trying to find anybody who's stupid enough to be logging in, being visible. I'd also say I understand if you go places and you want to use public Wi-Fi, it's convenient. I frankly think if you're dealing with public Wi-Fi, you're really playing with fire, because you have no earthly idea who that is. And there are some hackers who will mimic an in-store or a retailer's Wi-Fi and make you think you're signing into their Wi-Fi when it's really nothing but a spoof. Okay, now Figure 6.3, and we'll preview it for just a second, walks us through a process of security profiles, okay? And and even before that, I want to mention table 8.1. So I'm going to close this off for just a second. Now, like I said, this is more didactic than I will probably ever be, but I think it's important that you see these, okay? Now, the list that's here in terms of all of the malicious code types has grown and grown and grown. This is just really a sampling of all the stuff that's out there, okay? And as I've mentioned before, you have white hat people who will hack a system and then say, hey, there's a problem. Black hat people who are malicious in their intent. And then there's some people who just think it's just kind of a fun thing to do. They're hobbyists. The problem is hobbyists, if they go, then what they like to do is to say, here's the code I found to get into OBU's email, okay? Then it's out there, and you and I have the problem. And those folks are probably the biggest problem, because they never announce anything. They just do their damage and move on. So these different viruses, worms, Trojan horses, and they all do different types of things, give us a very multiple threat issue. And I can tell you, these companies that had huge data, Equifax, for example, is in deep trouble because their system got compromised. And you can even recall in that article there with North Korea, and then I point out where you remember that North Korea hacked Sony Pictures when they were going to make a movie about Kim Jong-un, and it was going to be something where they're going to mock him and make fun of him. And the North Korean government warned Sony and their cyber unit of the North Korean government, or someone sponsored by that government, went in and did their damage. So I wanted to let you see that there's so many different things that can happen, and this ought to make you concerned, okay? Especially if your business, if you're going to be running and trying to operate a business. And they talk about, the text there in 3.11 talks about denial of service attacks, spoofing, sniffing, all those different kinds of things. And in table 2, they show you some of the examples of cyber crime. So I'm going to pop that open here just a minute, okay? Okay. And these are where the computer is a target of crime or it's an instrument of crime. the lady that was in my Sunday school class, and she's an older lady, not too experienced, not too tech savvy, and she's there one day and she gets the blue screen of death, and it says you need to call Windows. Here's the number, blah blah blah. All right, she didn't know enough to understand that a real blue screen of death, the screen just goes blue. There's nothing on there. Okay, there are no commands, nothing. The screen just goes blue. Not knowing that, she was smart enough to call us a grandson who knew to come over and to figure out the problem. And what he figured out was there's a message saying call this number and it will cost you $300 for us to come in remote and fix your computer, which is just sheer stupidity. But if you don't know any better and you're a trusting soul, then you could put yourself into some problems. Well, fortunately, her grandson figured out what was going on and got a hold of her ISP, and they got her took the machine, and they really had to do quite a bit of work to get it all cleaned up and get it out of there. So, and then even went so far as to buy a new router. Okay. So routers, like computers, have an IP. They have an address, and once someone has seen that and figured it out, they can come after you. See, this is you can see the computer is either a target or an instrument of crime, and you can see the kinds of things that can happen. Let me say this also. Now, I make jokes about people, downloading in music and downloading movies. I make jokes about it, but let me say this: it really is no joke. It really isn't a laughing matter. When someone has created a movie, created a song, whatever, they deserve to be paid for their intellectual property investment. And I guess the classic example is there was a Napster, which you may remember was supposed to be a music file sharing system, okay? And so you would upload 10 songs that you had, and someone would upload 10 songs that they had, and we'd all trade, and we'd all have 20 bits of music based on that. Well, what happened was people would go to Napster and download music but never upload any. And Napster was going out and harvesting data, okay, and music, and they'd post stuff and people would get it. Well, they got sued for copyright violation, and they eventually shut themselves down. And I remember, when it first started, I thought, boy, this is great. Now, the internet that I knew first, okay, was really nothing more than static web pages, and with some that enabled you to post things. And Napster, which is, you might have heard of it when you were a kid, was one of those places where you uploaded a bunch of files and you downloaded files. The very first internet that was, the very first browser was up there, people would, they'd post recipes, stuff like that. People didn't put pictures, and it was more like a messaging system. Well, it's gone way beyond that. But the piracy is extremely, extremely, extremely rampant today, and one of the big issues that we have is the piracy of intellectual property. The worst is our folks who are out there trying to get secrets, like trade secrets, or even worse, hack in and get information on military weapon systems, things of that nature. So it's a very serious issue, and I want to make sure that you understood the computer can either be a target or it can be an instrument for that. Now, the text walks us through let me say this: this text, I read the chapter last night, and then some more this morning. It's very well written, and most of this is just simply some vocabulary, and a lot of it is common sense. And table 8.3 over on page 314 shows you the major data breaches, and even that is, when the authors do their next edition, will have to be updated because we've even had some greater data breaches than those. and this doesn't even deal with the issue of fake news, all of that stuff. They talk about click fraud. Click fraud is one of those issues where people go in and they, to up their ratings, say in Google AdSense, they'll go in and they'll click. They'll have a bot going and click 1,000 times with 500 likes. All of them are in the 4s and 5s. So so it looks like when you go to Amazon, for example, to buy something, there are 300 reviews and they're all good. Okay, and there are bots out there now. Amazon's taking steps to try to challenge that and to control it. Okay, but again, it's just one of those situations where they can do what they can do and not too much else. I guess the other part of the chapter talks about the business value of security and then legal obligations. The part in 319 that really should give you a pause are the various laws that have been put in place to make sure that you, if you're a business, guarantee privacy and security of your clients or your customers' data. Medical data especially are just, those are especially protected because it's so private. And now one of my doctors has a website, and you can go in and set up appointments and all this business. But that's it. There's no way that you could say, here's what I need to have done, or can I find patient records or anything like that at all. It's not available. Everything is done in paper. And I understand that because they just simply don't want to have a data breach and have a problem and have sensitive information out there. So they use it just basically like a calendar function, which is probably the smartest thing that they can possibly do. But there on 319, they talk about HIPAA, okay, and then the Gramm-Leach-Billy Act, and that was you as the company are responsible for the privacy and the security of your customers' data. So if you're running an Applebee's or you own your own business and people come in and they swipe, my wife loves to go to these art fairs and stuff like that. A lot of those people will use a little thing and you swipe across the card. And I wonder, I ask myself, do you really understand how risky that might be? Okay. I doubt that system is, they say it's encrypted and it's safe. I've got my doubts. And what they're after is the credit card number of the person who might have swiped it. And I've told my wife, I'm a little nervous about that. And I think I'd rather you just pay cash than take your card and swipe it. And they'll tell you it's safe and all this stuff. Listen, if they could get into places like Target with the systems they have, then cyber criminals can get out there. And for you and I as a business person, we've got to be concerned because we have a legal responsibility to our customers. And then you have the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, also known as SOX, and this involves the integrity of financial information. Okay, and it's really aimed at investment companies, banks, insurance companies, people like that. So now, if you compare the United States, say, to Europe, we're like the Wild West. Europe, data privacy they are absolutely committed to that. And that's why if you follow Google or Apple, Google especially, if you follow them very much, or Apple or Microsoft, you will see almost all the time that somebody in the European Union has sued Google or taken them to the European Union court over a data breach or privacy breach. And that's just the mentality of folks there, that security of personal information is important. Now, in that same New York Times edition today, I'll show you something real quickly. This is an interesting thing, and let me go back. This is, I'll go to the text section. I'll try, I think it's in the business section, okay? And it's talking about how China utilizes its internet. Let me see, maybe it's in the maybe it's over here in the text section. There it is. This is really fascinating. Okay, the Chinese government really controls what people can see on the internet. Okay, now you and I are not having a fight over what you can see. You and I are now in the middle of a battle between the government and large companies and some advocacy groups about throttling. What throttling is very simple. If someone wants to, they can pay more money for more bandwidth. So the bandwidth gets auctioned. Now, I have a data plan I pay for, okay? And inside the law, because I pay for unlimited data, I'm never throttled. I don't have that situation. Now, there are other people who have those throttling kinds of things, or a first come, first serve. So instead of battling over privacy here in the United States, we're battling over who really can have access to the net and get its full benefits. And so almost auctioning the thing off. So this article talks about China and their approach, okay? And their internet is really almost like an intranet. In North Korea, for example, has an intranet. And they have a little search engine. You can go to certain places, but they also have big controls on some things that other folks would say are not good. And so in some ways they're a little bit ahead of us. And I wanted to show you that. Now, we go back over here to the text, and they talk about some of these general controls, okay? And that's over in table 3.4. They talk about the general controls and the application controls. And let me say this: the greatest control is the human control. Okay. When Snowden walked out with all the data that he had, okay, he had it on a thumb drive, and he hid it and he got it out. He made a conscious effort to download all that data, okay, and some of it put people's lives at risk. This guy over at WikiLeaks, same story, hacking into information. Human beings are the variable in this whole process. And I can tell you, I have walked, I'm over here in the lab in Bailey, and I'm here in the lab right now. And I guarantee you, I can walk through this lab and I'm going to find 2 or 3 computers where somebody left the machine up and running, and they left their email and had not logged out. And I can get in their email. And with that, knowing their password, knowing their username, I can do a new password and be in their email and in their system. And with that, I can probably get into about anything else, because I can ask for whatever else they may be logged into. So as a matter of course, when you're here in the lab or anywhere, okay, turn your machine off or log out and close all the browsers and make sure you do it, because you're asking for trouble if you don't. Well, I've spent quite a considerable amount of time about that, and there at the bottom of page 322, they show us the risk assessment. I want to download this file on risk assessment for a minute. Let's take a look at what we've got going on here. So we'll download it. Okay, and it's a document, so it's going to render itself up. Now, here's what they're showing us, and this is related to that hands-on assignment that you have. But basically, here they have a company, Mercer Paints, okay, and here are the exposures, or those kinds of things that they believe are most likely to occur in terms of a security issue. And then they figured out an average dollar loss for each of those. Now, security is not only people coming in and doing bad things or using your computers like a zombie computer thing, for example, to do a denial of service. It's also issues like power failures, okay? And that power failure could be anything from the electric grid goes down to you're hit by a tornado, where's all of your data, etc. And any company that has anybody that's smart will have a mirror website, and they will have their data backed up to a mirror server or mirror server blades, so they have a backup when they go down. This is especially crucial as far as email, and one of the reasons that you see so many people now going to the cloud for email, why it's become so prevalent, why we've gone to the cloud, is simply that if you have a problem, it's simple. You just switch to a mirror and you're back up, and then you go fix what's wrong with your original site and applications, and away you go. You don't have the stuff buried on machines, okay? And so this is a pretty realistic listing, and I'm going to ask you, of course, to go in and do some things in terms of interpreting those risk assessments. And when you really look at this, this is, you could, if you wished, create a payoff table of sorts, because you see the potential live exposures, the loss, and the probability. So you could go in easily, put in, develop a payoff table from this, and from that I will say no more. But I also like this because it shows you the type of thing, excuse me, that is most likely to create problems for you. Okay, now I'm going to pop back here for a moment, and the other thing I want to do today is, and this is, I know many of you, I'm sure, hopefully many of you have turned in your interactive session. Last week when I had some of those, I took some points off for people not citing their sources. Now look, as I've said before, okay, on the interactive session, I'm not after a formal academic paper. Now everybody did a good job of organizing by using bullet points or particular questions or that type of thing. But one thing I saw lacking was some documentation. Now I'm going to go over to page 141 for just a moment, okay? Now we'll look at that. And you can probably hear me turning the pages. And this is the ethical and social issues, information systems. And this deals with behavioral targeting, okay? Now, when I look through the case here, okay, I come down to the case study questions, and there are 3 different questions which should help organize your thoughts. And if you said these will be my headings and then I'll just respond, I'm ecstatic. We're gold, okay? Now, when I see that, but there's no documentation, there are no references or anything like that, that bothers me. So let me point out to you, and if you have your book, you ought to, page 142, if you take a look, you're going to see the sources that they used, okay, for that case. All right, and those are some good starting points for you. Now, I'm going to show you a couple of things I may not have shown you before, but I want to make sure that you are on top of it. First of all is the library resources. Right here inside of Canvas, you have resources that you can go in and type a question. You can go in and look at the database. Now it will ask you to log in, and you can do so. But this is basically the library for all intents and purposes. If I would have had this when I was going to school, I would have thought I had died and gone to heaven. The closest we had was you could go to a kiosk at the front of the library. You could do your search, and you could get your results a day later. Okay? Now you can go in there and do the art. So I'm going to be looking to see if you go find some sources. Now, I understand that you often will find electronic resources or things of that nature. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to go back to the New York Times, okay? And I'm going to find that article. Oh, let me go back over here to New York Times. Okay. And okay. And I'm going to see, here we go. Once mocked. All right. North Korean, once the world wants their cyber power, no more. Now, I'm going to go in here to my programs, and I'm going to open up Microsoft Word. Okay. Okay. Now I'm going to open up a blank document. I hope. I'll put this down here for just a second. It's going to let me see the toolbar there or not. Yeah, I want to show the tabs and commands. There we go. Now, if I wanted to create a reference, I just come over here to references, okay? And then I put in manage sources, and it will give me the source manager. This is a fantastic little tool. Now here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a new one, and this is it's not a website, it's a document. And I would call it a document from a website. Okay? Now I'm going to click here, show all of the biography fields, and then I'm going to go back and I'm going to take a look at the author. Okay? And this is David Sanger, David Kirkpatrick, and Nicole Perloff. And I would fill in the author's names, the name of the web page, okay, is going to be the World Wants Life No More. Then the name of the website, it would be the New York Times Online. Then what year, the month, and the day. So you're just filling this stuff in. And I'm just to simplify this for this author, I'm just going to put the first person, David E. Sanger. So I'll put David E. Sanger. Okay. My apologies. I'm putting David E. Sanger. And then the name of the web page. And you know, the nice thing about it is I can just copy that. Control C, go back down to my Word doc. I'll put in the name of the web page and the world site, and the name of the website is New York Times Online. Now you say, why are you going through this? Well, based on what I saw, I might have either miscommunicated or maybe I didn't, maybe I wasn't clear enough. But this also, if you've not used this tool for your papers, you see, when you get something like you have an electronic source or you have a page in a web book, this will handle virtually any kind of reference that you may need to make. Okay, so it's just a fantastic tool. So I put in the year. Okay, we'll go back there, look for the year, and the year is 2017. And the month is October. And with all of your papers, you should use this tool. And the day is, oh, I didn't want to do that. Go back over here. And the day is the 15th. Okay. And then you begin to put in also the year you access this, so that the person who's looking at your source knows you looked at it recently. You've looked at it recently. And so you're going to put in today, it would be 2017, and the month of that access was October. And the day it was accessed was the 16th. Okay, then the URL. And if you want, you can go over to bit.ly and use theirs. We'll do that. I'll show you real quickly here. Citation, references, and all of that are, and make sure we have the right. Yeah, we're good there. Now, I'll go into bit.ly. This is also like an information system, but it's also to make sure that you have references that look that are authentic and are done properly, formatted properly. Because if they are, then they will tell the reader where you got them, etc. So I'm going to paste this in here. Many of you probably are yawning because you've used this. I'll be looking forward to seeing you do it. And here we'll put in the bit.ly URL. Okay. And then we want to scroll down further. If there's a version, a short title, a standard number, a medium, or a document, a DOI, fine. And we'll click OK. And now I have this. And I'm going to close this off. But you'll see that entry, okay, and it's beautifully done. It's done perfectly for APA. I just input the data, and then I let the dialogue do the work for me. So I wanted to cover that with you because doing it like this is just so easy, and it's correct, okay? And it'll help you a ton in terms of just doing your papers for other courses, all right? And I don't want you to write me a paper. I'm not saying that. But I do want you to cite some sources so that I can see that you've gone out and done a little bit of work. And your textbook tells you where it got its source data from. So you've got access to the library. I've showed you how to utilize this tool. And so let's go back over here and we'll continue on. Now, this is one of those rogues lists of cyber attacks, issues, eBay, payment systems, Sony, and the costs that were involved in terms of these firms. And you know, wow, yeah, you're just this level of crime. See, the thing about it is this can be prevented, although not perfectly, but it can be prevented. We'll go back over here, okay? And so I've shown you some about the library. I've shown you how to go over to that. Now, these show us some of the types of controls that we have in the security. This is over from the text, okay? And again, this is really important as regards security because many of these things involve the firm's, its property. And you can see these move all the way from applications or software up to administrative kinds of levels or efforts, okay? So, as I said before, I'm being a little more didactic than usual just to make sure. Now, here's the thing I would say, and they give you some depth things like computer abuse, spam, stuff like that. I think that you would be very, very wise to say to yourself, first of all, an email is a text message for all intents and purposes, and where it's available, you'd be smart to use a virtual private network, and the text talks about VPNs and how they work. Okay, OBU has one, and I use the virtual private network that we have. Now, I think over on page 328 where they talk about firewalls, okay, and basically it's exactly what it implies. It controls the flow of data into the company, into corporate systems, or the system. You have a firewall on your router at home. If you're smart, you'll also have a firewall built into, or use something that protects your browser when you're out on the internet. Okay, so you should have 2 layers of security at the very, very minimum. And I'm not going to recommend a brand that you should use. I wouldn't at all. But I'd say this: you need to make sure that, first of all, your ISP, if you're using an ISP, you should have 3 layers of protection: the ISP and its firewalls, the firewall for your router, if you've got a router, if you're using a router at home, okay? Well, anywhere you are, you're going to be using a router, and then a firewall that protects you that's or antivirus and internet protection built into your browser, okay, or the system on your machine, okay, that will detect and deal with those kinds of issues, and you really do need to have those. They're at the top of page 331. They show you about using digital certificates, encryption. The whole idea was really summarizing that, authentication, a response, okay, and you're good or you're not. You're kicked out or you're allowed to go on. One of the great challenges we have now is, as the text talks about and it concludes, problems that we have in terms of working with the cloud, okay, and with different types of devices. And the cloud is a problem very simply because the cloud, while it's backed up by, while the cloud is backed up by physical kinds of servers and server farms and all that, okay, that cloud can be penetrated, and if someone gets into your server system, then you've got real problems. So computing on the cloud is a challenge, because you can't tell everybody now, shut off your machine. You can't carry out data sticks or anything like this, because that's a very, very difficult thing to do. And even worse now for folks who are in security is all the different types of devices. Now, Apple is legendary for not having, Apple's legendary, if you will, for having fewer security problems. And here's the reason why. Apple has worked under what we call a walled garden, and that is their devices play well with each other. Their devices don't play so well with other types of applications or other types of computers except for servers, okay? But they don't play well with and if you, one of the reasons that Apple doesn't carry Microsoft Access is they don't want the potential problems that can occur by what we call an SQL injection. An SQL is, if you've taken data admin with me or understand that a query is really nothing more than some code. And so when we run the query, we get a view of data, okay? But we haven't changed the table unless we have a query that's changing the table. But right, most end users, we just go and plumb the data from the table and grab it. And we have some code. Now, if I'm doing that, okay, outside of out in the open, okay, out on the net, okay, then someone could come along and get that code. And once they have that code, they know the name of the table, and if they know the name of the table, they're into that database, and they can inject executable code into that SQL. What they'll do is they'll convert it to what we call a VBA, a Visual Basic and VBA, Visual Basic Code, and there's VBA for Access, there's VBA for Excel, there's for Word, but usually it's going to be from the Visual Basic that's behind whatever product you're using, and they'll inject an executable query, and it will ask for the name, and away you go. So that's something that you have to be quite careful about. And one of the challenges that are faced by us when we talk about using all of these different devices, and they're all so different, and they have such different kinds of security levels, and so it's a nightmare for companies to try to keep that straight, because what's secure on a phone? Look, on a telephone, your telephone is not very secure. I could take your telephone, all right, and take out the computer, all right, the motherboard that's in your phone, and I can put that into a device, and I can read everything on your phone. Or I can go into your phone, plug into a computer that will read and then will output everything on your phone. So there's nothing on your phone that someone can't get. So I'd be cautious. Even the stuff you delete, what a lot of people don't understand is when they delete a file, you haven't deleted the data. What you've done is you've deleted the pathway, but it's still there. So so if someone wants to come in and scoop that data out, they do. And what they do is they'll use the same thing that's used with antivirus software to go and find malicious code. Malicious code, when it's buried in your machine, for example, will be there, okay, but it doesn't have a pathway that's visible. So antivirus software scans to everything and anything in your machine, and then when it finds something that looks funny, it pops up. It'll say, do you want to get rid of this or keep it? And if it looks suspicious to you, you probably ought to just go ahead and get rid of it. But that's one of the things. So when you use your phone, okay, especially using your phone or your computer for that matter, okay, and any login, anything you've done, it's there. There's one way you get rid of all that data. If you have it in the motherboard of your phone, okay, if you have it all on the storage in your machine, there's one way you get rid of it. You take a hammer, you smash it, you pour gasoline on it, and you burn it. That is the only way that you get rid of that data. You can go in and clean it out, okay? You can use a data cleaner and think you're safe, and you're not. You can go in and you can put it in password protected folders, and it's not available to get. And I can tell you that just having listened to the stories of people who had their system hacked and had to go and have somebody find it and pull it all out. So the security issue is Chapter 8, and once again, I want to apologize because I'm not an expert on security. Okay, that's just it's not my thing. Okay, I can tell you that, for example, when I work offline, when I'm remote, I use the VPN. Now, when I'm here at school, I'm in my office or I'm in the lab. I use the Ethernet. It's probably the most protected of all. And then I use the Wi-Fi in my office, and that is protected. But when I'm away from here, I utilize the virtual private network, and only for school business, nothing else. And then any other types of stuff I might do because I have a machine at home, I'm very circumspect about what I do because basically it's the university's property. Okay, so my machine I carry around here, I do nothing but school business on it because that's what it's for. Well, I've gone and railed on here. It's about 2:55. We started about 5 minutes early, so we've gone about an hour. Okay, and I think we've covered Chapter 8 pretty well. And let me go back over here for a minute. I want to just take a few minutes to talk about that assignment that's due. Okay, and let me pop back over here. the hands-on project. You're going to use the risk assessment file. This is due the 18th, okay? And I showed you today how where the library app is in Canvas. I also showed you today about how to use the reference builder in Word, okay? If I'd had those things when I was going to school, I would have thought I'd died and gone to heaven, okay? Trust me, much better. And you can see I have a series of tasks for you to do, okay? And I'm going to have you analyze the data, then I'm going to have you visualize the data, okay? And I show you, and I tell you to do that in a series of tabs inside of that workbook, okay? Well, it's about 2:57. We started at about 1:57, so we've gone about an hour. The 15 minutes won't kill you because I think this assignment number 7 may take you a little bit of time, but I will be back on. I'll do a recording Wednesday, and yeah, if you're headed out or you know, like a lot of people do, you can always work. You can always see the recording, you know, later that day or over the weekend. And I just want to make sure that let me pop over here to the syllabus for a second. And so we're all on top of what we've got to do because these holidays seem to throw everybody. So, okay, let's come up here for a minute. Okay. Okay, October 16th was the interactive session. That's due today. It was due at 2 o'clock. Then the hands-on project, okay? You see, here's a security and I'll have them remind me later. And here we have the hands-on project, okay, is due the 18th, which is Wednesday, and the Loudon Chapter 8 is due the 18th, and then you don't have anything again until the 23rd, okay? And that's an interactive session, and that's due by 2 p.m., and then another hands-on project. Those are due that next Friday, okay? The interactive sessions, look, don't go overboard. Answer the questions. Use a paragraph at the very most. Find and use a couple of relevant references. Format them properly, and you're gold, okay? And that's really what I want to see with those. The hands-on project number 8, I want to look at it for just a minute. Okay, that's pages 375. I want to look at that just a second. And see what I'm asking you to do there. And you know, you always have the option to get it done. Yeah, it's page 75, it's hands-on project number 8, and it's that 9/11. It talks about some questions, the 3 bullet points dealing with supply chain processes, okay? So that'll take care of those things, and I will see all of you next week. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the share and then shut this down. And I'm not going to make a promise, okay? I may move all of the assignments back to next Wednesday to give you some breathing room for the time when you get back, okay? So just make sure you understand. I'm not making a promise, okay, that I'll do it. I'm going to think about it. I'm going to look at these assignments and kind of gauge how much time or work I'm asking you to do. So I may move all those assignments to everything to do to a week from this Wednesday for that week, okay? Well, I thank you so much for your time, and it's great to see all of you. Let me get up here, and we got 10 of us. I go through. And Brian, thank you, Erica, Christian, West, you're here, and see Libby, Martin, Robert, Samuel, Shane. Glad to see all of you here. Anybody have a question? If you do, if you want to ask me, you could pop me a chat question. Anybody? Okay, and remember, I sent all of you a copy of my virtual office hours, okay? And you come over, and they're no difference. I can screen share. I can try to answer questions. You can hear me. I can hear you. You can leave your video on, put your video off. I don't care. I record all of those, okay? But if you came on and you asked me a question and you do the chat function, okay, no one will see it but me and you. Otherwise, it shows up. It's cloaked, so only your eye can see it. So if you should need to do that, you can use those virtual office hours. It might be of help. My hunch is when you get to the end of the course and you get desperate, you will. Okay, folks, thank you so much. Have a good one. I'm going to stop the share, and then I'm going to end the recording, and you folks have a good day.